So anyway, without further ado, this is it. Don't be scared when you look at it. The idea is it is on one sheet, so you can actually, I don't know if you can see me, but you can actually print it out on one sheet of A3 or 2 sheets of A4 and stick them together if you need to. But it's all on one sheet. So this is the Wicked spreadsheet at a glance. So we're just going to have a quick run through so you can see all the different bits, and then we'll start to put it together. So first of all, to note, the yellow spaces are all the spaces where you input something. So you can input. The green spaces are where the automatic calculations are. And then the pink are the very important results, very important ones that you need to look at. There's the building detail and names you can input. There are assumptions that you can make based on things like how much things cost to build and how much you can get per square foot to rent out. There's a space where you just add in the square meters and it'll work out feet and other things like that. So I'm just letting somebody else in. There's a space for potential grants and any in-kind contributions that you might get. There's a space to work out the total calculations for the costs and the annual income. And there's a space for loans, social investment and community shares. So this is the finance package that you put together to fund the purchase of a building. It then shows you the profit and loss calculations for 30 years, which enables you to see how that progresses and add in community wealth calculations. So gradually, as you're earning more, you can pull out funds which will go into the community wealth fund to build that up. And it also shows you the balance sheet projections, and including the pink line, which is the cash flow, and then the final calcs of the total community share and community wealth developed and the movements in shares. Then there's a little key on the side. There's the people that made it at the top, and then we've put together some important numbers so you can quickly check where you are. So that was a quick run through. It doesn't represent a full cost analysis. It is just a way of being able to suss out a project and a building and get a quick feedback on whether it's going to work, what sort of grants you need, what the finance might be, and you can play with it. And all I can say is it's about playing with it. So we're going to go through it in a little bit more detail now before we actually go onto the spreadsheet itself. So these are the different areas that I just pulled up. So there's the key, input cells, cells with the formula, very important cells, and then the white ones are on the balance sheet, you just leave those. Input the names and spaces. So I've used all these examples are directly from the co-op store one, which we'll be going through in detail, but these are the images pulled off of it. So you get to put in the name of the actual property and the areas that you're talking about. There's an area where you can make assumptions based on things like what the lettings, if you're letting it out, what their fees might be, what the tax status is. Like we talked about earlier with Jeff, if you've got charitable tax status, that will be 0. And the spreadsheet also assumes that the any community shares that are made as part of this are paid back from year 5. So there's assumptions in there. Then the other area of assumptions is you make an assumption on what the rentable rates might be. So how much per square foot might you be able to rent that space out for? And you also make an assumption on what the cost might be. So how much, when a builder says it's so much a square meter to build it, you make those assumptions. And you can put those in there. Now they're already filled in, but once you're used to it, you can change those to what's relevant for you or in your area. You can also, on this one, you'll see the yellow, that's adding in the area. So you just add in the area and it will automatically calculate the rentable square meter area and the rentable square feet area for you. Then there's an area where you can do the grants and in kind. So you can see on the yellow at the top, you can add in potential grants. And on the right, you can add the percentage likelihood of success. And that will automatically get you your green bit in the middle. So you will be able to work out And obviously, as you start to get some of these grants, you can put them in as actual figures, and as you start the discussions, but it allows you to put in all the potential grants that might be out there and have a realistic estimate of what you might get. The other thing that this does, it adds in the in-kind, so it puts in that first column how much the actual cost is at full rate, and in the column on the right you can say, well, actually, we've got somebody donating this, or we've got a local builder that's going to do it cheaper, so you enable yourself to put in a bit of an in-kind contribution, so you can have a play with those. What's next? Then there's the total cost calculation. So this bit of the spreadsheet, you can pick the type of building cost that is attributable to the area that you're talking about, which works out the refurb costs. Hello. You can add up any other costs, and it will give you on the bottom one there, the pink one, it will give you the total cost of the project. This bit also allows you to put the total income in, whether that's from rent or whether that's from other income. And don't worry too much about this, because it will be gone through in more detail and you will have a chance to play with it. There's also a little bit on valuation and yields. This can be a little bit complicated, but it's basically the estimate income as a percentage of the total cost gives you a yield. So in this case, the yield is 4.3%, 36%. When developers are looking at projects, they're looking for a yield of about 6.5%. So what the second box does here, the second green item, it says, actually, if that income had that yield, the actual price would be 1.8 million, at 1.08 million, whereas actually it's going to cost 1.6 million. So it just gives you a little bit of a flavour, because we're dealing with getting some grant support towards it. That can make a difference. So there's a bit about yield in there. Then there's the bit where you can add in when you realise what bit's missing. So you've got your grants, you've got your total cost, you've got your in-kind. What's missing is then the loans and social finance. You can then play with this to your heart's content and change the percentages and the interest rates and the capital payments, and it will automatically feed into everything else. And this allows you to put 3 types of finance in. It allows you to put community shares in. It allows you to put we've got loan 1 and loan 2. So how it oh, James, can you just put yourself on mute?
Sorry.
That's right. So how this works is you fill in your percentages, and one's a social investor, which might be more expensive interest rate. For example, in the middle it says 5%, so that will be your social investor. And then when you've got your community shares and your social investment finance sorted, you can then get mortgages and other things more easily from a more traditional lender. So you can play with that. And obviously, if you don't need the finance, you can just have no finance and some shares. It will depend on the size of the project. And then what all of that does, as you can see, most of this is green, and that's because all the things will enable you to automatically calculate your profit and loss over 30 years. So you add your dates in, and then there's a few spaces there for you to add in things like overhead, staff costs, business rates, if you wanted to. And then it works out the total total profit and loss over 30 years. The important line here is the yellow line, and you get to decide when the community wealth starts. So you can have that line completely blank or feeding in from the beginning, and you get the chance to change that, and we'll go through that in more detail when we go through the next bit. Then it also feeds to the balance sheet. So again, you don't have to do anything on this one, just watch the cash line. So the cash line is the pink line, and you can see it really clearly all the way through, and what you're looking for is your project to make sure that's always in the black. It's set up to go red and negative if you go over, and this is all based on not having an overdraft and the cash being positive. And the last bit looks at paying the shares back and the cumulative community wealth distributions. Then there's the summary of important cells, and again, that's all fed in, so it allows you to have a look at it and compare and contrast different projects really easily. We'll have a look at that. And finally, we've added in something that we've called a working capital line. So if you find it is going negative and you want to inject some working capital up front, there is a box that you can add in that there. Okay, so quick reminder. Yellow is for input. The green is where you do your calculations, where the calculations are already inbuilt for you. The pink are the very important results. There will be a quiz on this later, so watch carefully. Buildings, details, names and spaces at the top left. Assumptions about build costs and rental rates. Area calculations. Potential grants and the likelihood of success, and in kind as well. Total costs and income calculations. Loans, investments and community shares. Profit and loss calcs for 30 years. Balance sheet projections for 30 years, including the pink, very important cash line. Final calcs, including community wealth and share movements. The key, people that made it. The summary of important numbers. Okay, just as a reminder, it's not a full cost analysis, but it does help you get started. And once you are familiar with it and play with it, you can make it your own by adding in various things. So we're just going to do the next one. So we're going to, I'll be looking at the co-op. Joanne, you raised a hand. You want to unmute and ask a question? Because I can't.
Yeah, sorry. I'm just wondering if you could explain exactly what you mean by in kind in this context.
Oh, yes. Well, when we go to the spreadsheet, make sure I cover that. But it's basically if we put in the full cost into the cost calculations, but if you know that you're going to get a local builder to do it cheaper, or you've got some suppliers, or you think you can do it better, then you can put the in-kind percentage in. You can leave it at 0, which means it's just the cost that you've calculated, but it'll all become clear when we look at the spreadsheet.
All right, thanks.
No worries. So this is the co-op. So what do we know about it? It's owned by Central England Co-op. It's approximately 30 metres by 14 metres, which was just basically measuring outside. We have got funding from the feasibility from Architectural Heritage Fund to do a feasibility study. We're not going to do Brian's top tips because Brian is here. I'm going to stop sharing and I'm going to share the spreadsheet itself. So just before we go on to the cooperative store, so we're now, I'm presuming everybody can see that we're in Excel now in the spreadsheet. So if we look at the tabs along the bottom, so this is what you'll get when you get your spreadsheet. So there is a page of instructions. So the instructions are all there. Every single cell is named. So if you have a problem with anything, you can go back and have a look in there. There's also the link to the film that's on the YouTube, but also there will be the film added in there for the whole workshop. So we'll cut out all the irrelevant bits, but we'll have a film there as well, so you could watch that. There's the open source license, which Austin referred to earlier. So you can just fill in your details, basically cut it, paste it into an email, or there's a document as well that you can just do it in Word. But I thought it was useful to attach it to the spreadsheet. Then there's a worked example, so Wiki spreadsheet example for the co-op, which we're going to go through. There's one that's been pre-filled with all the assumptions that you can play with, and there's one that's completely blank that you can add in your own assumptions. And then there's the one with the market example, which we'll go through as well. And then we've also got Brian's top tips, so that's available in video form and it's available on your spreadsheet. But today you will be able to meet Brian live, and he will do a live performance, so you're in for a bit of a thrill there. So back to the co-op one. So what I'll do is I'm going to go to in the same order that we talk through the spreadsheet. I'll just talk through this. It's already been filled in, so we'll go through it as if we're filling it in. So you've got a building you're interested in. Start up there, top left, put in the name of the actual space. Then you can input the different areas. Now this one has got ground floor, it's got a first floor, and it's got a second floor. So we've just input those numbers. Then you move down the spreadsheet to the assumptions. So if you remember, the first lot of assumptions were about things like inflation, let-in fees, design build fees, tax status, area loss factor. So we've put these things in. I'm just going to explain. At the moment we've set it to 0 on inflation. You can put inflation in if you want, it'll just change the spreadsheet mainly on the income side. So we just find it easy at the moment just to have no inflation, but you can play with that. Letting agent fees. So we've put in that we expect to pay 10% of the income to a letting agent. And again, you can change all of these. Build cost fees. So this is the design fees and the build cost fees, things like planning and architects and all those things that you might need. We've put a percentage in for that. Tax status, we've assumed it's a charitable tax status for a community benefit society, so we've put in a 0 for that. The area loss factor, that's basically when you put in your meter area. So like when I paced outside the co-op and it was 30 meters by 14 meters, I'm assuming that when you do the conversion inside, there's a loss of areas that you'll need for communal spaces and things like stairs. So I spoke to East Midlands House and they said that was probably a little bit of an overestimate, but that's what we're playing with. And again, you can change this. And if you've got a building that there's none of that, you can put 0 if you're working from the actual figures that you know are going to be rented out. So this is all for you to play with, but that's what we've put in the assumption for this one. And then we've also included a rental gaps loss factor, which is basically saying that you don't assume that you're going to have 100% tenants all the time. This spreadsheet assumes that there will be a one share offer, community share offer made, and it will be paid back from year 5. And there's the standard, this is how you transfer meters to square feet, and that's in there for some of the calculations. So we've input the assumptions, and these are already filled in for you on the pre-filled one. Then the second set of assumptions are about what you might get per square feet for renting a space out, and what you might get charged for build costs for areas. So we've chosen these areas: office, community rate, affordable accommodation, retail and community co-working, and we've put some rates per square feet in. And what I would say is when you're doing the calculations up the top and when you're looking at it, you're always got to step back and go, is that reasonable? And think about your area, affordability, other spaces. So you can do your own research and put these in, but we've got some filled in there for you. And then the same with build. We've got these are based in price per square meter for build costs over a range of different types of build. So I've got heritage, accommodation, refurbishment, remodeling, and again you can use your own. What's next? Next you go up to grants. Okay, sorry, yeah, where's the grants? There they are. So this area, you can start to think about some of the grants that might be available, and you can put the whole of the grant in there that you can find. So Power to Change, £300,000 is in there. So you can start to list some of the grants that you might be eligible for and might be able to get. And then on the far right hand side, you can put in what success you think you might have. And you can just change those percentages. So we've chosen these percentages, but again, you can change them and you can add more. This is where the in-kind comes in. So because of, when we come to the next bit, it'll become clear, but the costs of the refurbishment automatically pop down here from what you put in at the top, which we'll do in a sec. And you can say, well, actually, we think we're going to get a 20% discount on that. So if I change that to 0, it would just mean there's nothing in the middle there, so there's no contribution. But we think that on the fees, you know, we're working with Land Aid that are doing the pro bono scheme. We've got local people who might get involved. So we're thinking, yes, it might be 12% of the total costs at full price, but we'll get a bit of a discount. So you can, this is where your in-kind comes in. And if you don't think you'll get any, that's fine. You just put 0 in there and it will just won't put anything in the middle, because this figure at the bottom, this 1.2 million, is the amount that you're then going to take off your total calculation that you think you're going to get through grants and in kind before you start thinking about your finance. So again, it's for you to play with. Then we're going to go up to the area of the spreadsheet where it works out all the cool bits. So we've actually included drop down here. So in this area you can select the build type from the drop down list. So if you click on that, it will give you the drop down list that you've already input at the bottom. So if you pick, at the moment we pick remodel, which is less than if it was heritage. So if I pressed heritage, you should see that £420,000 change. So suddenly if it's a complete heritage project, the prices are going to go up. So we're going to go back to, I forgot what it was now, was it new remodel? So you can select then the type of build cost that you think it might be, and that will automatically then give you your refurbishment cost. In this bit below it, you can add in any other costs that you might think are relevant. So in this one, I've just added, I just think because it's a heritage building, there's going to be some bits that we don't know about. So I've put a figure in there. And again, it's all estimates at this stage, because obviously for this particular building, we've got the 14,000 from the Architectural Heritage Fund. If we're able to use that and do a proper study, then some of these figures will start becoming actuals rather than just estimates. But it gives us an idea of where we are. So with the co-op, we've offered them £250,000 for this building. We think there might be a builder told me it cost £20,000 to do the bit of demolition that's required. The fees are automatically calculated from your assumptions, which gives you then your total cost. So that's the potential total cost of this co-op refurbishment. Now you remember we've just done the grants, so these kind of need to be done in, you need to come back to this and go to your grants and back again. So that grant figure, which we can go and have a quick look at again, there it was. So we came up with 1204, which was basically the grants, the percentages and the in-kind. And that then automatically feeds up here, which gives you this amount here, the amount that you need to find, which takes us, I'm going to ignore the yield for this at this moment. We're going to go up to what we need. So we need 419,000 basically, based on if we were successful with those grants and these prices stack up. So this is the bit where you can fill in your percentages. So this is all available for you to play with. So at the bottom, you can see the total amounts of capital. So in community shares, we're saying that there's going to be £62,000 of shares that we think we can raise from the community from this building, which we think is reasonable considering its importance in the local community. We think that, so this one here is Key Fund. Now Key Fund are a social investor that go in early. They are more expensive, but what they allow you to do is, and they don't use the building as what do you call it, as security effectively. So they're more supportive, but they are more expensive. But when you've got them on board, you're looking at being able to then convince somebody else that you can have a more reasonable interest loan, but they will use it as security. So on this particular example, we've got a loan from an investor at 293,000. We've got a loan from a social investor at 62. We've got some community shares. We put in our own interest rates, you put in your capital repayments, and that will automatically feed in. So again, you can just play with this. Then we go down and we'll just look at yield there. This was the yield we explained earlier. That, sorry, I realised I've forgotten to do the income bit. So we'll look at the income now. So on the income, so on these same lines, you've got the ground floor, first floor and second floor. So we've done the costs, now we're looking at the income. So again, similarly to the build costs, you've got the usage type. So we've decided that the ground floor could be retail and community, the first floor can be co-working and startup, and the second floor will be affordable accommodation. And again, you've put these prices in below, so when you click on one of these, you're already pre-selecting the price, which will then give you your annual income. That then gives you your maximum annual income, which gets changed by the area loss factor. So it's already built in. So if you put the area loss factor as 0, then that would come up as not the area loss factor, the voids in tenancies. If you put the voids in tenancies as 0, you'd get 78,000 as your estimate annual income. That then helps you work out your yield. So there's a percentage of the total costs. Estimate annual income, estimate of total cost gives you yield, and this yield was 4.36%. If a builder was, or if a developer was looking at this project, they were looking at they want to get 6.5%, and at that rate, they would only value at that annual income, they would value it at 1.089 million, which, as you can see, is less than what it would actually cost to do. So this might put some developers off, we hope. So then we go down to profit and loss. So this is the profit and loss. Most of it, as you can see, is green. So it's already calculated from all of your previous inputs. So you put the year in there, it will automatically then add on a year, and you put in these yellow figures here. So you can add in for some repairs and renewals, you can add in for overheads, you can add in some staff costs if you want to, and they will then automatically be included in the spreadsheet. Business rates we put 0, so that's 0. And this is the wealth fund line. So what this does, it takes a percentage of the cash that's from the year before and takes it out and gives it to the community wealth fund. So in this particular scenario, you can see that the wealth can be taken out. Then you go to the balance sheet. The important thing on the balance sheet is to look at the pink line. So the pink line is the cash in the bank. And as long as that's positive, then you're on track. And you can see as the community wealth starts, then it'll take it out of the cash. So as long as it doesn't make it negative, so you can check that cash line. What then that does at the very bottom, the last bit is it accumulates the community wealth. So this bottom line here, it will add up all the community wealth. There we go, community wealth fund distribution. So it will show you what this is, how this is working out. And if you come to the end of this, for this particular project, so the co-op at that price, with that level of investment required, with all the interests included, will generate after 30 years £544,000 worth of community wealth.